Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at John chapter 9. The last few chapters have shown rising tension between Jesus and the Pharisees, and this chapter is no different. When Jesus heals a man born blind, we'll get many different reactions, from the Pharisees to the disciples and even the man's parents. Now, all of these responses will be ill-informed in some way, but the response of the blind man, who has nowhere else to turn, he will show us something new. Jesus is here to bring new creation, healing, and salvation to everyone who believes in him. If we're comfortable in our blindness, if we think we can see in the dark, then we're going to be in for a rude awakening whenever the light turns on. Jesus is going to condemn arrogance and challenge us to accept our blindness so that we can truly see the world as he sees it. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind?" Jesus answered, "It was neither that this man sinned, nor his parents, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him." Jesus and company are passing through Jerusalem, and they see this man who has been blind since birth. And the disciples are quick to judge. Obviously, somebody had to have sinned for this to come about, whether it was this man or his parents. Why else would God allow something like that to happen? They're trying to align themselves with Exodus 20 and 34 statements about how God visits the iniquity of fathers on their children, even to the third and fourth generations. But they forget that those same passages highlight God's loving kindness to thousands. As a result, they end up sounding more like friends of Job than followers of Jesus. And that's exactly what Jesus says. It isn't a punishment that this man was born blind. It was a way for God to be glorified through him becoming healed. This statement has huge implications for our understanding of the problem of evil and injustice in the world. Jesus says that while sin still does have its consequences, sometimes the only purpose for suffering is to see how God is faithful in removing our suffering. And who would be a better example of that than Christ, who submitted to a torturous death on a cross, only to be raised back to life 3 days later? We must work the works of him who sent me, as long as it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Jesus here repeats his I am statement from the last chapter, saying how he is the light of the world. And this motif has also already been used in John 1 and John 3. Once again, Jesus is setting himself on analogy to the creation story in Genesis 1, where God separated light from darkness. Jesus says that this darkness hasn't been vanquished yet. Its time is still to come, a foreshadowing of his imminent death. And that's all the more reason to do the work of God, of teaching and healing, during the daytime, when Jesus, the light, is still with them. When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and applied the clay to his eyes, and said to him, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam," which is translated sent. So he went away and washed, and came back seeing. The healing of the man born blind is the 6th miracle in John's Gospel. Jesus spits on the ground, which makes some mud, and then smears it on the man's eyes. It's an allusion to Genesis 2, how mankind was created out of the dust of the ground. And then Jesus tells the man to wash at a pool called Siloam. It once again highlights the motif of ritual washings and living water that we've seen play out in John 1, 2, 4, 5, and 7. This man comes back seeing, his eyes having been opened. Now that same phrase was used back in Genesis 3 to describe Adam and Eve's realization of their guilt and shame after they had eaten from the wrong tree. So Jesus is opening eyes too, but it's a realization of a new freedom and healing. And so the imagery is clear. Jesus is here to make new creations, new people who are cleansed from the sin and suffering and evil of this present world. Therefore, the neighbors, and those who previously saw him as a beggar, were saying, "Is not this the one who used to sit and beg?" Others were saying, "This is he." Still others were saying, "No, but he is like him." He kept saying, "I am the one." So they were saying to him, "How then were your eyes opened?" He answered, "The man who is called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes, and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went away and washed, and I received sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" And he said, "I do not know." After this miracle, though, Jesus disappears, which brings a lot of confusion to the community. They keep insisting that this guy must be a different person and only look like that old blind beggar who used to sit on the side of the road. But the man keeps insisting that he really was blind, and then he met someone named Jesus who really did heal him. They brought to the Pharisees the man who was formerly blind. Now it was the Sabbath on the day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also were asking him again how he received his sight. And he said to them, "He applied clay to my eyes, and I washed, and I see." Therefore some of the Pharisees were saying, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others were saying, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you say about him, since he opened your eyes?" And he said, "He's a prophet." And this confusion and controversy only escalates whenever the Pharisees get involved. This healing was another one that was done intentionally on the Sabbath, just like Jesus healing the crippled man at the pool of Bethesda in John 5. Now the crippled man carried his pallet according to Jesus' command, which meant that he was working and violated the commandment according to the Pharisees' rigorous standards. But this time it was Jesus who violated the Sabbath commands by spitting on the ground, thus making clay, thus working on the day of rest. Of course, this only leads to more division. Some people say that he can't be from God and break the Sabbath commands, and others say he can't be not from God and heal the blind. It's the same arguments we heard in John chapter 7. Of course, as for the man who was born blind, he can't deny what Jesus has done for him. He's content to call him a prophet, a man working for and speaking on behalf of God. Then the Jews did not believe it of him, that he had been blind and had received sight, until they called the parents of the very one who had received his sight, and questioned them, saying, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? Then how does he now see?" His parents answered them and said, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind, but how he now sees, we do not know. Or who opened his eyes? We do not know. Ask him, he is of age, he will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone confessed him to be the Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said to him, "He is of age. Ask him." Meanwhile, some of the Pharisees don't even believe this guy was blind to begin with. They tracked down the guy's parents to ask them if he was born blind or not. The parents do say that he was born blind, but they refuse to make a statement about how he now can see. Heartbreakingly, they're more afraid of being excommunicated than believing the testimony of their own son. They'd prefer to stay out of the whole business in order that they can keep their comfortable life inside the community. And it displays the very real cost of following Jesus, a cost that many people face in some form or another: rejection from your own family. It's why Jesus said in Matthew 10 that those who love their family more than they love him are not worthy to be called his disciples. So a second time they called the man who had been born blind and said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He then answered, "Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? You do not want to become his disciples too, do you?" They reviled him and said, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he is from." The man answered and said to them, "Well, here is an amazing thing, that you do not know where he is from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is God-fearing and does his will, he hears him. Since the beginning of time, it has never been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, You were born entirely in sins, and you are teaching us?" So they put him out. Once again, the Pharisees question the man, demanding that he give glory to God alone and not any to Jesus. This man, though, is insistent. "I don't know where he's from, no, but I know that he healed me." It shows the astounding faith and gratitude that only comes from first-hand experience with Jesus' deliverance and healing. The Pharisees continue to question the man, and the man is shocked. He supposes they must be interested in becoming Jesus' disciples themselves if they're so obsessed with him. Of course, that really sets the Pharisees off. And the man boils it down simply. If Jesus wasn't from God, then how did he heal me? And the Pharisees, in arrogance, excommunicate the man from the synagogue. Jesus heard that they had put him out, and finding him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and he is the one who is talking with you." And he said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshipped him. And Jesus said, "For judgment I came into this world, so that those who do not see may see, and that those who see may become blind." Those of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and said to him, "We are not blind too, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But since you say we see, your sin remains." Finally, Jesus shows back up and questions the man himself. He asks him if he really believes in him as the Son of Man, and the man says yes. Before, he only believed that Jesus was a prophet. But now, with nowhere else to turn, he says that Jesus must truly be the Messiah. The man worships Jesus, which should be our only response to his salvation and healing. And then Jesus gives a cryptic response about his mission in the world. He's here to make the blind see, which aligns with prophecies like Isaiah 42. But he's also here to make those who see blind. It's a statement condemning the arrogance of the people like the Pharisees. When the Pharisees question this, Jesus says, as long as you think you know everything, you'll be too prideful to see how you really need forgiveness. Jesus healing the man born blind does a lot to escalate the tension between himself and the Pharisees. But the symbolism around the miracle is hard to miss. Jesus is condemning the Pharisees for their arrogance. While they think they see everything and know all the mysteries of God, Jesus says that they're really the ones who are blind. The Pharisees are blinding themselves to Jesus and to his path to new creation, simply because it doesn't look like what they imagined it to look like. For us today, it's important that we don't fall into the same trap. The trap of thinking we know more than we do, believing that we don't need forgiveness as much as the poor, or the vulnerable, or the oppressed. Jesus is here to make a new creation, but that means dismantling the old one. So if we're too comfortable in a world full of sin and evil and darkness, we're going to be in for a shock when the light of the world truly comes. Thanks for watching 1189. I hope that you have a good day, and God bless.